Which chapter we were doing? Which part? Transmission of question. Okay, find out. All of you take out your book. The other day we started discussing about the structure of the neuron. Sonia? Also Bhakti. तुम्हारा बेस्ट फ्रेंड मैं तो अपना गाना गा के खत्म करके चली जाऊंगी। तुमने पैसा दिया है
गाने के लेंगे मैम।
हाँ
गाने के लेंगे।
गाना तो हर हालत में मैं गा के चली जाती हूँ।
देख लो।
फिर ऐसे तुमने दिया है तुम सीखो तुम्हारा गेन है नहीं सीखो तुम्हारा लॉस है। अच्छा take out your notebook. We have started what nerve impulse conduction. Did you understand the previous part, nerve impulse conduction? We discussed about what was the method of nerve impulse conduction. Method of nerve impulse conduction, that is known as what? What did we learn? What was that word I was using? The method of nerve impulse conduction is known as, do you remember, with the help of the axon, the structure of the axon I was explaining you? What was that method of nerve impulse conduction known as? Transmission of nerve impulse. What is that method known as? What is the nature of the impulse? The nature of the impulse is, what was that word? Electrochemical. Nerve impulse transmission is electrochemical. Did we study in the axon how the nerve impulse travels in the form of iron, sodium, potassium? Did you understand that concept? What were the three stages we studied that day? Resting stage में क्या होता है, depolarized में क्या होता है, and repolarized stage में क्या होता है? So that is what, in the form of three stages, you have to understand. Nerve impulse transmission always is studied under three stages, and the three stages, let me again show you those figures. Transmission, what is the meaning of transmission? Transmission means transport of the message. Transport of the message. So this is what we were studying. This is what we were studying the other day, the process of nerve impulse transmission. So now, this is a concept that has to be understood very good. What did we start with? First of all, we studied the structure of a neuron. What are the two most important parts of a neuron? The dendrites and the axon. What were the two major parts of a neuron? Did we write down the difference between the dendrite and the axon? Dekha? So if I talk about the structure of the dendrite and the axon, what is it? What is the job of the dendrites? What did we study the other day? Dendrites will always receive stimulus. Dendrites के साथ impulse कभी नहीं जाता है. Dendrites के साथ it is always stimulus. What is the meaning of the word stimulus? Stimulus always means, now that I am talking, sound, light, chemical substances, or touch, prick, pressure. Any of these examples can be. Meaning any type of a factor which forces us to show a response, that is a stimulus. Any type of a factor because of which we show a response. Now that I am talking to you, either you are writing something or you are looking at me because you understand that the source of sound, she is saying something. So now that we are talking about sound can be a stimulus, light can be a stimulus, touch can be a stimulus. Somebody pricks, or whenever we go for a blood test, etc., the prick, and then we respond immediately. Light can be a stimulus. Whenever we see a flash of light or absence of light, do we respond in two different conditions? Yes, there's a response specific. Dendrites and axon difference is always to remember in terms of structure, in terms of function. So now, I said if it is a structure dendrite and axon, can you tell me what is the structural difference? What will you write? They are short, extensively long. What else? Only one symbol for a neuron, numerous for a neuron. Function. What do they receive? Stimulus. What do they carry? Impulse. Now, what was the job? What was the meaning of these two words? I told you the other day. I had written everything here. What is the meaning of the word stimulus? Any type of any information, sound, heat, light, touch. Now that the dendrites have received, the axon will carry it further, but the form is different. The dendrites receive in one form, axon transmit in another form. What is the form in which axon transmits? By movement of the ions in and out. Especially what ions? Sodium, chloride, potassium, we had studied that day. Talking about this process, how does the impulse get traveled from here till here? This is what is known as electrical impulse. Then from here to the next neuron, that is known as chemical impulse. I revise again. I said from here till the start of the axon till the end of the axon, how does the message travel? Almost like the charges in the wire, in the electrical wire. That's the reason known as electrical impulse. That's the reason it is known as electrical impulse. So kya ho raha tha? The other day, how did we learn? Part by part, the axon will become excited. Now that one part is excited, the disturbances travel to the next and next and next. ऐसे करके step by step, the message keeps on transmitting. Transmission of impulse, that's why. So अब जैसे the message has gone from one part to the other, one part to the other, one part to the other. So the regions at the back, what was happening? Stabilize हो जा रहा था. And the region in the front, disturb होगा. That is what the concept is. So if you look into this part, that is what the structure was. That is what the structure we had come across. So if this is the axon now, the entire long axon we can see in parts. I'd asked you to draw this diagram also the other day. So what did we understand? The message in this axon has not started moving. Transmission abhi tak shuru nahi hua hai. Now, if the transmission has not started, what is this condition of the axon known as? It is in the resting state. So resting state में axon का feature कैसे रहता है? Outside all more or less sodium mostly, and inside potassium mostly, or chlorides mostly. Now that there's a disturbance, now that the impulse have started moving, what will happen? A small part of the axon. Okay, in this figure they are showing from this side. So now that the axon, so now if the impulse is moving this side, can you tell me where is the cell body? यहाँ पे cell body है कि यहाँ पे cell body है? The cell body is here. Okay, so now the message is moving this direction in this particular way. So देखो, one particular region of the axon disturbed, meaning the message has started moving in a different manner. And now what has happened? Sodium will move in, potassium will go out. Basically, it is explained with the help of sodium and potassium. वैसे तो और भी बहुत सारे ions moving in and out, but we majorly explain with sodium and potassium. Q, because internally potassium is the major type of ions present, and externally sodium is the major type of ion present. Okay. Then are you able to understand that this disturbed region is moving? Yes. So the disturbed region moving matlab, this disturbance will pass over to the next. It will excite the next. So now when the disturbance is here, what is happening to the region previous? Establish ho jayega. So that is what I had explained you. Let me just show you just one figure. So this is what we had understood. If it is in the polarized state, this is supposed to be the condition. Internally all negatively charged and outside externally positively charged. But I want to show you that this part of the now disturbed, meaning message has traveled till here. Then how should I show you? I should be showing you this way, that now these positive charges have moved in and the negative charges have moved out. So the positive charges have come in, negative charges have gone out. So this is how I should show you. Positive charges are in and the negative charges are out. This is a state of the axon which indicates that the message is getting transmitted. तो ये जो disturbance है, this will not be stationary, this will be passing over. So just in a less than a fraction of a second, this disturbance will pass over. When this disturbance passes over, what will happen to the region previous? They will re-establish again. Now that they re-establish again, what will happen? The message travels further. As and when the message is traveling further, the region previous, they become established. इसको क्या बोलेंगे? Repolarization. So what are the three terms we had studied? This is resting state or polarized. When this type of a situation has happened, this is known as the active state or depolarized. This is a condition where the message is moving further, but a particular distance the message move ho chuka hai, and this is now getting stabilized back, a condition known as repolarized. So in this form, the message is now constantly moving from one step to the other, one step to the other, one step to the other, up end of the axon when the message reaches. Now what is the story? At the end of the axon, when the message reaches, I have to again understand that if this is the axon and then there will be a whole lot of these axon terminals, let me try understanding what will happen at one of these axon knobs. Every single axon terminal will have a small swollen structure, जिसे axon knob कहा जाता है. So what will happen here? This is the axon knob. What did I tell you? By the time the message has reached here, now next one, new chemical substances start getting formed. So different type of chemical substances in neurons are there. We are talking about just one right now. So new type of chemical substances will be formed, and not only that they are formed, they will be packed up in small packets. What are these packets known as? Vesicles. In the chapter cell last year, we had already come across this word vesicle. Vesicle, when we say, you are to understand, it's a bubble-like structure. एक छोटा सा bubble-like structure है, जिसके अंदर ये सारे chemicals fill in है. But these chemicals will come and fuse with the membrane of the axon terminal. So now they will come and fuse with the membrane of the axon terminal. So if that is the condition, see there, this type of vesicles will be formed, and these vesicles will contain all these chemical substances. Now that they fuse, the chemicals are all now released out. But released out where? Released out in the space between two neurons. So now I may again think of that there is another neuron here, and this neuron has its cell body this side. This neuron, the next neuron has got its cell body here. And this neuron, if this is the cell body, definitely this is the dendrite that we have to think of. So this axon terminal and the dendrites of the next neuron, that is a junction formed every time in our body. In our body, there are such type of junctions in millions. The connection of the axon terminal and the dendrites of the next in millions. So what is this connection known as? What is this junction known as? This junction is known as the synapse. What is the definition of the word synapse? Synapse is the point of contact between two neurons, axon terminal of one and the dendrites of the next. What are these chemical substances? I gave you the names the last class. Who can tell me this? Neurotransmitters. What are these chemical substances known as? Neurotransmitters. One example also we had learned the other day. One example also we had learned the other day. Give an example. Example क्या लिखना है? Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. What is acetylcholine? Acetylcholine is an excitatory chemical. This excitatory chemical, now that they come in contact with the dendrites of the next, they will be able to initiate the process of transmission in the next neuron also. For example, now that I talk about the neurons in the ear, now that you are able to hear and then write, how is it possible? I'm saying something and you are able to write. You are seeing something and you are able to write. How is it possible? The neurons from your eye, the surface of the neurons. Now, these neurons which are there on the surface of the eye, the dendrites are receiving the message, passing it to the axon, from one axon to the other, one axon to the other. So this is what is happening. Every neuron from the surface of the eye, the neurons in a chain, they carry the messages to the brain, and from the brain again, by the way of those chains of neurons, the message is coming to your hands, the muscles of the hand, and the muscles are able to contract, and you are able to write. Same is, how do we hear and how do we coordinate? इसी तरह से messages keep on getting transmitted from one neuron to the other, one neuron to the other, one neuron to the other. So from the ear to the brain, from the brain to the hand, to the leg, or to any other part of the body. So this concept you have to remember. So what I say, from the dendrites of the first neuron till the axon terminal, what is the method of impulse transmission? That is electrical. And from the axon terminal to the dendrites of the next, what is the method? This is chemical. So what is the nature of the impulse transmission? Together when we combine, what is this? Electrochemical. What is meant by electrochemical nerve impulse transmission? This is what you have to explain. The names of this, very, very important. What is synapse? What is the names of this chemical substances that we are talking about? Now, this type of figures, just some explanatory extra figures I'm just showing you. You have got one specific structure in your book. Take out that figure there. Take out that figure. Even in your volume, you have that figure. Where the axon terminals meet a muscle. Can you see this? Axon terminals meet a muscle. Now, I will talk about that. What is the fate of the axon terminals? I try to understand. Where would the axon terminals meet? The axon terminals would generally meet or come in contact with the dendrites of the next neuron. This is one pathway possible. What is the other pathway possible? The other pathway possible is a muscle or a gland. These are the two pathways only possible. What are the two pathways I am saying? What about these axon terminals? जरूरी है कि हमेशा the axon terminal will send the messages to the next neuron? No, not necessary every time. The axon terminal will pass on the message. वॉल्यूम नहीं है किसी के पास भी नहीं है वॉल्यूम all of you saw that figure, tick that figure. I'm going to that concept now. I'll tell you. Now, just now what I was explaining you is this part. Every time the axon passes over the messages to the dendrite of the next neuron, and how in the chain of neurons the messages travel. But not necessarily every time the axon will pass on the message to the dendrites of the next neuron. कभी ना कभी तो ऐसा भी होगा where the axon terminals will be on the surface of the stomach, on the muscle, on the muscles of the hands and the legs, on the surface of the liver, definitely. Then what? Where would the axon terminals also terminate? Where can the axon terminals also finish up? The axon terminals can also finish up on the surface of a muscle, any part of our body, or a gland. The stomach, the intestine, the liver, salivary gland, kahin pe bhi. Then, if it is ending up with the dendrite of the next neuron, then what is the next part? The next part is nothing but transmission of impulse. The next part is nothing but transmission of impulse. वही same process repeat होगा. But if it is ending up on a gland, then this gland will start the process of secretion of any type of a hormone, enzyme, etc. You already learned some enzymes. The secretion of enzyme from the stomach. What is that enzyme in the stomach?
Hydrochloric.
How many months left for the exam? Hydrochloric acid exam है किसने बोला? No. What is that enzyme in the stomach? What is that enzyme in the stomach? Pepsin. Pepsin. The enzyme. So what I said just now that the stomach is producing, the wall of the stomach is producing the enzyme. That is also because of the message carried by some neurons. When the food is in the stomach, the message will be carried by the neurons, and now the glands in the stomach start releasing the pepsin. So if it is a gland, what will the job be now? The gland will start secreting an enzyme or a hormone. If it is a muscle, if the axon terminal finishes up on the surface of the muscles of our face, hands, legs, then what? Contraction and movement. So what are the other possibility? Other possibility ये है contraction and movement. So now the figure that you have in your textbook, in your volume, is this concept shown. Are you able to see in that figure there? Is the axon terminal on the surface of a muscle? Is it that shown there? Is the axon terminal on the surface of the muscle shown? Is it shown on the surface of the muscle? Are you able to understand the first figure? You will get this diagram in your paper and it will be asked, what is depicted in this figure? Depicted मतलब इस particular figure में क्या explain किया जा रहा है? What is depicted in this figure? You have to write. This figure depicts this type of a connection. Yes or no? So इसको क्या बोलेंगे? This is known as a neuro. Write down all of you. This is known as a neuromuscular junction. This is known as a neuromuscular junction. Meaning क्या है? What is a neuromuscular junction? When a neuron ends up on the surface of a muscle. When a neuron, underline there and write what is the meaning of a neuromuscular junction. When a neuron ends up on the surface of a muscle, उसको बोलेंगे neuromuscular junction. This is the first figure that I am talking about. Second figure इतने important नहीं है for you. The first figure is very, very important. Then what is this particular type of a connection known as? This particular type of a connection is known as interneuronal junction. Interneuronal junction. Now you take out your notebook and write down this flowchart. What are the two types of connections from the axon terminal possible? You get a question where you have to explain this. I will give you a question and a little bit of an explanation also. पहले ये flowchart लिखो. Flowchart लिखो all of you. नोटबुक है I'm going to check that. पहले ये लिखें. होमवर्क दिया था ना? दिया था. 10th standard के student ऐसे कौन बोलते हैं? You should try answering on your own. See this type of a diagram you have. Is this the diagram that you have? हाँ कि ना? This is the diagram that you have where the axon terminal is finishing up on the surface of a muscle. Then what will be the? You will be asked questions. What will be the fate of this muscle? What will you write? The muscle will contract. The muscle will contract and show movements. But sometimes possible, most of the time possible, meaning this is not most of the time or sometimes, these are the two possibilities. Axon terminal will either finish up near the dendrites or it will finish up on the surface of the muscle. Dendrites, then this is known as interneuronal junction. Only this flowchart to write up. सिर्फ ये लिखना है. Not this. Only this one you should know. What are the two types of junctions possible from the axon terminals? Axon terminals unite with the next neuron, interneuronal junction, with the muscle, neuromuscular junction. We will try answering one question. अच्छा वो पहले दो questions क्या थे?
Difference between dendrites and axons.
Patient लोग try भी नहीं किया. This 9th standard में you have studied, know all these. You're asking me the answer. शर्म नहीं आई थोड़ी? हाँ? बोला नहीं मैं तो try भी नहीं किया.
Function
बुक खोला ही नहीं. बुक खोला ही नहीं. Girls?
नहीं खोला.
You were absent.
तूने खोला.
आपने लिख के रखा, ठीक है. अब जाके आज अगले Friday तक, अगले Tuesday तक खाना भी मत खाना. So are you going to listen to me what I say? Dendrites and axon. पहले में complete करते हैं. फटाफट take one question ले. ये लिखा. Did you write this?
दूसरा function of myelin sheath.
Myelin sheath, TH.
Sheath हो ना?
नहीं, sheath. Sheath and sheath there's a difference. Sheath is always hard. Sheath is always soft. I'll show you that here. वो बाद में लिखेंगे. Now that we have written down this flow chart, complete करेंगे फटाफट. Write down this question. Very common you get in your paper. What happens? Write down the question. What happens at the synapse?
हो गया?
हो गया.
लिखा?
हो गया.
What happens at the synapse?
What is present in it?
Examples of neurotransmitter all written.
Yeah.
So now you know this. Then we will finish with these two questions. So already I have given you the concept of synapse and the neurotransmitter.
What is synapse? What is present in it?
What happens at the synapse, लिखा?
दिया ही आपने ऑप्शन है.
What? This is 10th standard or how you all are behaving? क्या लिखा वो भी see? दिया है दिया है दो.
भी लिखा है.
What happens at the synapse लिखा हमने? लिखा आंसर लिखा. यहाँ पे जो तुम लोग नोटबुक बंद करते हो, you don't even open the notebook at home. कहाँ पे? आंसर
नहीं लिखा है. ये क्या है? Point of contact between the. What is synapse?
What happens is
What is it?
The point of contact between.
What is synapse लिखा?
same what is synapse and what is present inside.
What is present in the synapse? The method of nerve impulse you have not written. No? Method of nerve impulse. Let me just give you one. You have to read this. This type of questions you will be asked. Chalo fast. What happens at the synapse? We go fast. This is with this reference, this flowchart that I give you. With this reference, the description. You have to understand what is being asked in the question, what to answer. What happens at the synapse? तू अभी ना 9th पे पहले जा फिर से. What happens at the synapse? Write down. Answer. The axon terminals. The axon terminals. The axon terminals releasing. Releases neurotransmitters. Releases neurotransmitters which diffuses through the synapse. Which diffuses through the synapse. Full stop. Which diffuses through the synapse. Full stop. In a interneuronal junction. Now you know what is the interneuronal junction. In a interneuronal junction. In a interneuronal junction. The neurotransmitters stimulate the next neuron Neurotransmitter spelling याद रखो. Neurotransmitters stimulate the next neuron and transmission of message takes place. And ये chapter हुआ स्कूल में. And transmission of message takes place. Life process हुआ complete. Fourth part चालू है. अच्छा. And transmission of impulse takes place. Full stop. Next paragraph. In a neuromuscular junction. Next paragraph. In a neuromuscular junction. In a neuromuscular junction, the neurotransmitters released from the axon terminals diffuse through the synapse to reach through the synapse, diffuse through the synapse to reach the muscles. Full stop. Diffuse through the synapse to reach the muscles or certain glands. To reach the muscles or certain glands. Full stop. The glands. Next. Continue the sentence. Next line you can write. The glands secrete enzymes or hormones.
Now
Glands.
synapse to reach the
Muscles or certain glands. Muscles or certain glands. Full stop. The glands release enzymes, secrete enzyme or hormones, and muscles. Glands secrete enzymes or hormones, and muscles contract and show movement. Contract and show movement. ठीक है. अब फटाफट एक टेबल बनाओ. Dendrites and axon difference. That are the questions that I gave you. So this is the entire concept about what is meant by chemical coordination. Chemical coordination we have to study. Electrochemical. Now this word also you have to write down. You will forget. What is the nature of the impulse? Electrochemical. Why is it known as electrochemical? So that also you should know. Let us complete this fast. Table. Dendrites and axon. Fast. No talking. Three differences between axon and dendrites. Based on the question you should write. Likhो number 1. Structure and function. Both you should know. Number 1. For the dendrites. क्या कंफ्यूजन है? Where's your phone? You did not put it on silent.
now वो silent हो गई
मतलब क्या तो बोलो.
Nokia
हाँ तो उसको स्विच ऑफ करो.
स्विच ऑफ करूंगा गाना बजेगा और तेज बजेगा
तो ये क्लास में आने के पहले करना है ना. Okay, dendrites. Under dendrites you write. These are short branched processes. Under dendrites, these are short branched processes. Under axon, it is a long unbranched process. It is a long unbranched process. Unbranched matlab the axon does not keep dividing like the dendrites. Dendrites are branch processes short, axon is long and unbranched. Second, number two, dendrites. Numerous for a neuron. Numerous for a neuron, they are in large numbers. Numerous for a neuron. For axon, only one number we are writing, no? So for dendrites, numerous for a neuron, and axon, only one for a neuron. Only one for a neuron. Now the function. Always to write dendrites. What is the function? Every time I've been telling you. Receive stimulus. Receive stimulus. Oh yeah. Receive stimulus. For axon, what to write?
Always to write.
Oh, right.
Something बोला आपने.
To receive stimulus. For dendrites, receive stimulus. Axon का क्या मैं बताई हमेशा? What did I tell you?
Impulse.
Axon is meant to conduct impulses. हाँ.
Conduct impulse.
तुम लोगों का क्या वाटर है? He is not able to follow dictation.
Non-conduct impulse.
Conduct.
अरे ये कौन से स्कूल से आए हो तुम? डिक्टेशन तुमको फॉलो नहीं हो रहा है? Then write no.
हम कितने बार जा रहे हैं समझ नहीं आ रहा.
अरे you are a 10th standard child, तुम 5th standard की थोड़ी हो.
एकदम normal speed है मैम.
अच्छा स्कूल में डिक्टेशन नहीं लिखाते, they don't discuss answers. हाँ, where did you get stuck? Tell me.
Third point.
Axon third point क्या है? Read out.
Conduct.
हाँ तो dendrites वाला बोलो ना. Which point? हाँ, receive stimulus. हाँ, axon लिखो. Conduct impulses. Function of axon, conduct impulses. Conduct impulse. So these three differences you should know. Now let us talk about the myelin sheath. What is the job of the myelin sheath? The structure of the neuron, if we see, what is the myelin sheath and what is its job? Now, whenever we are talking about the job of a neuron, let us write down. Every particular neuron, if you see, they will always have this type of a outer covering of some fatty tissue. What is the job of this outer layer of fatty tissue? वैसे कुछ खास है और वो भी अभी दिखाने की जरूरत बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. So now that we are talking about that, this particular entire fatty layer that we talk about, this fatty layer, what is its job? The layer of fat, that is what is known as the myelin sheath. It is sheath, and this myelin sheath will not allow the loss of impulses. Let us write down this answer. The other day we had drawn the diagram of the neuron. Did we draw the diagram of the neuron?
मैम ये जो लिखा है ना वो सेल समथिंग.
Schwann cell. Schwann cell.
उसका नाम और भी कहीं पे होगा ना वो रॉबर्ट उसके साथ.
That is cell theory. Cell theory.
हाँ cell theory में पढ़ा इसका.
Matthias Schleiden and Theodor Schwann. Okay, chalo. Now we will write down what is myelin sheath. Did you draw the myelin sheath in your figure? पहले एक बार check करो fast. Did you draw myelin sheath in the diagram?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So where is the myelin sheath? On the outer layer, outer region of the axon, and this myelin sheath is a deposit of fats which is preventing the loss of messages. Let us write. Myelin sheath is a layer of. Question भी मैं वापस बताऊं? अरे तुम लोग क्या कर रहे हो? 6 standard only.
देखो मैम लिखा ही नहीं था उसमें इसलिए.
Action. Question है, what is the function of myelin sheath? तो पहले इसको question पे ढूंढने दो. ज्ञान होने वाला है इस बैच का। What is the function of myelin sheath? What is the function of myelin sheath? That is the answer I am giving you. What is the function of myelin sheath? Write down. Myelin sheath is a layer of fatty deposit. Myelin sheath is a layer of fatty deposit surrounding the axon. Fatty deposits surrounding the axon, which acts
surrounding the
axon, which acts as an insulator, which acts as an insulator, and prevents the loss of impulses during message transmission, loss of impulses during message transmission in an axon. Message transmission in an axon. Okay, so that is all about the concept of impulse transmission. Now let us talk about the structure of the brain. The next part that we are going to talk about would be the nervous system, and to learn about the structure of the human brain. Only 3-4 parts of the brain you are studying, and the location function only to study. So now we would understand a simple concept of the nervous system. Already we had introduced those terms. Nerves. What is the definition of the word nerve? What is the definition of the word nerve? सीधा सीधा बैठो, इसको तो मैं अभी सीधा बाहर निकालूंगा।
मैम मैंने आपको पहले बोला।
What is the definition of the word nerve? Bundle of neurons. Here now that we study the brain, we are going to study the nervous system. What is the subdivision? Nervous system, as we had started the chapter, we started understanding the structure of the neuron and the method of impulse transmission in the neuron. Now, a little bit more we try understanding is that which are the main centers of our body where the neurons are extensively coiled, where the neurons are extensively accumulated in large numbers. So now the nervous system is made up of what? Nerves. Where is it present? All over the body. The nervous system is present all over the body, in our eyes, in the brain, in the skin, in the fingers, all throughout the hand, leg, feet, anywhere of the body that we are. Yes. See the bed. See the straight. Now that we are talking about the nervous system, always be very clear. What is the nervous system made up of? Nerves. Nerves are in millions. Now you know nerves are made up of neurons. Neurons are in the form of chains, connecting one to the other. And what is happening from one neuron to the other? The transmission of the messages. So all these concepts are clear to you now. Then what is the division of the nervous system? Now we start understanding. Definition of the nerve. Again, from time to time you should remember. What is the difference between the word nerve and neuron? That also we should be very clear. Neuron, how did we define the word neuron? What was the definition of the word neuron? Nerve, just now as you all said, nerve is a bundle of neurons. So neuron का definition क्या था? Structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Meaning
nerve, bundle of nerve
cells. So लिखा तो है, decorate तो हो गया. अब ये absorb भी होनी चाहिए ना. All these things keep reading. So now the division of the nervous system, what are the two major divisions? The two major divisions are the central nervous system. The central nervous system. What is the central nervous system made up of? The central nervous system is majorly made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain and the spinal cord. Now these words all of you must have come across, the brain and the spinal cord. Where is the spinal cord? Right from the base of the head till the upper hip region, the entire rod-like structure, the vertebral column, and inside the rod-like structure, the spinal cord. I'll show you images there. The first part that I'm talking about, nervous system. Major part of the nervous system is the central nervous system. All of you will write this. The central nervous system, again composed of the brain and the spinal cord. What is the other part? The other part is known as the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, how can we define? The peripheral nervous system, actually you are not studying too much in detail. You are just studying this part a little bit. The peripheral nervous system, how will you define? What is the definition you should write? Peripheral nervous system is a network of nerves. It is a network of nerves connecting the central nervous system. Central nervous system can also be written in short as CNS. I should not see you smiling. Hindi mein bolu. Now, nervous system, what is the definition? I said, how will you define? Here, peripheral nervous system thoda sa hi padhna hai, but those 2-3 words you should know. Peripheral nervous system kaise define karenge? Network of nerves that connect the central nervous system to the different somatic organs. Somatic organs matlab organs of the body. Internal organs of the body. So a network of neurons all over, the brain to the hand, the spinal cord to the leg, the brain to the lungs, the liver to the spinal cord. If I think this way, the entire body is having a network of neurons. So this network of neurons ko bolenge peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system ke divisions. What are the two main divisions of the peripheral nervous system? The two main divisions of the peripheral nervous system is the somatic nervous system. This is one, the somatic nervous system, and the second is the autonomic nervous system. So this much only, the autonomic nervous system, and just one function for each. What did I say? Peripheral nervous system kya hai? I am not talking about this part. This part we will go later. This part thoda sa detail mein padhna hai. Peripheral nervous system is just the network of neurons that we have in our body connecting the brain, spinal cord. CNS matlab brain and spinal cord. हाँ बोलो. Just now I said central nervous system को short form में CNS बोलते हैं. So connecting the somatic, SOMATIC. What is the meaning of somatic? When I talk about the peripheral nervous system, I just now, how did I define? Network of neurons that connect the CNS. What is the meaning? CNS? Central nervous system. यहाँ पे abbreviation लिख के रखो. CNS also means central nervous system. Connecting the CNS to different somatic organs. So what are somatic organs to understand? Somatic organs matlab all the internal organs. Somatic organs matlab all the internal organs can also be termed as, the visceral organs can also be termed as somatic organs. So peripheral nervous system can be divided into two parts. What is it? Somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Then what is their role? Something to understand that if I consider almost like 2000 neurons here, 2000 neurons again bifurcate ho jata hai. Some of these neurons form the somatic nervous system. What would their function be? They control all the voluntary actions. What is the meaning of voluntary? What is the meaning of voluntary? Voluntary matlab any type of a contraction, function that we can control, we can regulate. So I'm saying that if it is a somatic nervous system, What will be the job?
heart muscles भी voluntary.
नहीं. Can you regulate the movement of your heart?
हम रोक सकते हैं ना.
कैसे रोकते बताओ? सांस को रोकना और हार्ट को रोकना अलग बात है ना. When we are talking about we can stop our breath only maybe for a few seconds. Are we stopping the heartbeat? No, we are not stopping the heartbeat. We cannot stop the heartbeat.
Lower fast.
Nothing you can do.
Lower fast तो कर सकते
Heartbeat कैसे तुम control कर
हैं.
सकते हो?
भागेंगे तो fast हो जाएगा. सांस.
Are you doing it on your own? No. Now that you are running, if I ask you that I want to check your pulse, अभी 100 pulse per minute करके दिखाओ. Can you show? You cannot. अगर मैं बोलूँ now I'm going to check your pulse, 50 pulse करके बताओ. Can you do? You cannot. Heartbeat we cannot regulate. Always remember, children. Heartbeat we cannot regulate. But the heartbeat and the breathing rate, as per the need of the body, it changes. You are running, heartbeat and breathing rate both changes. A person is sick, a person has suffered from profuse blood loss, heartbeat and breathing rate as it is goes down. So as per the need of the body. Now let us try understanding what is the job of the somatic nervous system.
Speed up हो जाता है.
These are as per the need of the body. जब जब जरूरत है, it will speed up, it will slow down. So now I say somatic nervous system, what are you supposed to understand? A group of neurons. This group of neurons, what are they doing? Controlling all the voluntary actions of our body. What is the meaning of voluntary? Any type of functions that we can regulate. Any type of functions that we can regulate. Then what should be for autonomic? Autonomic से ये हमेशा याद रखना. Autonomic मतलब जो automatic body में होगा that we cannot control. So when we are talking about autonomic functions, if I am talking about controls of the voluntary functions, here we are supposed to write autonomic nervous system always controls all the involuntary functions. They control all the involuntary functions. Here, to understand this concept, voluntary and involuntary is very important in the 9th standard. Also, you had studied these words. Voluntary always means actions of the body which we can regulate. Now that I am talking, now that you are writing, these are all voluntary actions. Involuntary actions कौन-कौन से हैं? The movement of the heart, the movement of the lungs, the movement of the food in the esophagus and the mixing of the food in the stomach and the process of digestion in the intestine, we cannot control. So ये सारे involuntary actions हैं. So what did we learn here first? The divisions of the classification of the nervous system. What are the categories? First of all, CNS and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system पहले हमने सीखा because this is only this much that you have to study. Peripheral nervous system, what is the definition? You should know what is the definition. And then what is its subdivision? Two main subdivisions are somatic, which can regulate all the internal organs, voluntary actions, and autonomic, which can regulate or which will be responsible for all the involuntary functions. Now coming back to this, the central nervous system. Major part of the central nervous system is the brain, and that is what we are going to talk about. The major part of the central nervous system is the brain. Looking into the central nervous system, the first part that we try understanding is the brain. What are we going to understand first for the brain is the protective covering of the brain. What is the protective covering of the brain? The protective cover of the brain, what is it known as? Now, if this is the structure of the brain that I show, all of us, we are aware, this brain is nothing but a accumulation of neurons. Large number, millions of neurons here accumulated, extensively coiled and compact, but it is very much protected by this bony cover. What is this bony cover known as? Skull. So we start with this, the brain. What is the protective structures? What are the protective structures of the brain? The protective structures of the brain, if I have to talk about the protective structures, if it is the bony structure I am talking about, then it is known as the skull, also known as the cranium. All of you will take a note of this word, cranium. What is the other word for skull? The other word for skull is cranium, also known as the brain box. Brain box is a common word. So when we are, huh?
दिया हुआ है वाली.
Diya bhai na? This is a word that you should be always writing. So when we are talking about what is the bony cover of the brain, the bony cover of the brain is the skull and also known as the cranium. This is the bony cover that I am talking about. Then what about the membranous cover? The membranous cover of the brain. If I talk about what about the membranous cover, the second, the membranous cover is the presence of some sheath-like structures, but arranged three always in a sequence. Now, meaning, if I'm talking about the brain, say suppose I talk about the entire structure, the brain. So I understand that this particular bony cover is the skull, and just below the skull there is a layer of some tissues, and three of them always arranged in a sequence. So this layer that I'm talking about, three in a sequence present, what is this layer known as? This is known as the meninges. Protective cover of the brain. The first one, bony cover. What is the bony cover known as cranium? But what is the protective membranous cover known as? The protective membranous cover is known as the meninges. Did anybody hear about the word meningitis? सुना है कभी?
मेरा नहीं होता है. मेरा
पूरी बड़ी का मतलब?
उसका नींद तो नहीं अलग है.
Now, when we are talking about meninges from the concept of meningitis also, there are certain different type of disorders where infection, inflammation may happen to this particular layer, which is very, very fatal for an organism, for an individual. So first of all, we talk about these two, the protective cover. The protective cover, number one, the skull, and the membranous cover, the meninges. The next day we are going to start with
कौन आ रहा है पापा?
पापा बड़े याद कर रहे हैं.
इसका link तो जैसा है.
We'll continue with the parts of the brain. The next class, all of you will read and come. Don't come like blank slates in the classroom. Next day से fourth reception में submit करके आना है. Next day से fourth reception में submit